I'm Shala Mahoney, Chair of the GQR Board of Directors and your host for this journey. We engaged a select group of business leaders with experience of Eastern, West, and Southern Africa with the following research question. Given the perennial disruptive risks that Africa has faced, how resilient did corporate Africa prove to be in dealing with COVID-19? And so now on to our third respondent, Mr. Lamin Manjang, for his perspective on the successes and constraints and lessons learned from corporate Africa's response to the COVID-19 pandemic.
When COVID-19 hit the shores of Africa, I think we saw governments and the private sector respond to deal with this challenge. In Nigeria, for instance, we had the private sector coalition against COVID-19, which was formed, and it comprised all the commercial banks in Nigeria, together with large companies in the private sector that came together. We were able to mobilize about 27 billion naira to be able to support the efforts against COVID-19. This intervention led to, say, support to vulnerable communities. We all knew that when the lockdown happened, there were people who really genuinely were in need of support. So part of the funding went to support those needy people. Some of the money was also used in terms of building the infrastructure, like isolation centers, fully equipped to be able to handle any surge in coronavirus cases. There was also investment in public health awareness campaign so that people just can be educated to know what COVID-19 was all about and how they could go about preventing themselves from getting it or from spreading it to other people. We've also seen measures like the move by the Central Bank of Nigeria to insist that no bank should lay off staff as a result of COVID-19. So that way, banks were able to keep their staff, so there were no redundancies and people had security of employment. Corporate Africa also responded in terms of helping staff to be able to work from home. We all saw how during the crisis, a lot of people had to work from home. So there was a lot of investment in that capacity to enable people to work effectively from home. And of course, we invested in terms of just providing for the health and well-being of our staff, giving them the necessary personal protective equipment. And of course, if any staff tested positive, being able to give them all kinds of support to be able to recover from the virus.
And so, on the whole, a relatively positive assessment by all three of our respondents in terms of how Africa responded to the COVID-19 pandemic. And although Africa might not have been fully prepared for the pandemic, when the crisis erupted, corporate Africa and African governments generally responded quite swiftly. And perhaps we can even go as far as to say that what Africa lacked in preparedness, it seems to have made up for in the measures that corporate Africa and African governments rapidly instituted in response to the crisis. And if there's a lesson to be learned there, it must surely be that if you are not prepared adequately for a crisis, then if and when the crisis hits, if you're going to survive it, you have no choice but to respond rapidly and with great agility.